and well met, friends, and welcome to the beautiful city of Oxford. Home to the eponymous University of Oxford and its many historic colleges, beautiful architecture, and centuries of world-leading innovation and learning. So naturally, I'm here to talk about coffee. Yes, coffee. That life-giving focus juice that has been getting former gifted kids with ADHD through their university degrees here since, it turns out, 1650. It was here, on the Oxford High Street, nestled among the imposing colleges, libraries, and if 17th century Oxford was anything like it is today, many souvenir shops selling university sweatshirts and American sweets for some reason, that the country's first coffee house opened over 370 years ago. It was on this site on the High Street that a coffee house was first opened in 1650 by a fellow named Jacob, about whom not much else is known other than the fact that he's Jewish and likely an immigrant from a country where coffee drinking was already a beloved pastime. We don't have a surname or contemporary portrait for Jacob, so here's an artist's rendering of what he might have looked like. Presumably, he arrived in Oxford and, sensing a commercial, culinary, and social gap in the market, decided to gamble on the likelihood that the English would love coffee as much as he did. This, his coffee house, was opened as part of the Angel Inn, a large coaching hotel dating back to the late 14th century. Diarist Anthony Wood wrote at the time, "This year, Jacob, a Jew, opened a coffee house at the Angel in the parish of St. Peter in the East Oxon, and there it was by some who delighted in the novelty, drank." And drink they did, and the rest is history. But here's where it gets complicated. The cafe currently occupying the space has been in business not since the age of Cromwell, but the age of, Rachel from Friends. We know that the Angel Inn and its associated coffee room lasted until its sale in 1855, when the space formerly occupying the coffee house became a grocer under the ownership of a Mr. Francis Cooper. The business pivoted to marmalade making later on, and though they later moved to premises elsewhere, they're still making marmalade. I had some on toast before recording this. It was very pleasant. Not sponsored, but I'm willing to discuss. After the Coopers moved out in 1919, it was a grocer's again, run by the Twining brothers for another 20 years, then briefly an ironmonger, briefly a cafe again, then part of the co-op grocery store, then a post office, then the Cooper Company returned to make it into a marmalade museum, then it was a teddy bear shop, and at last, since 1997, it's been a cafe again. But here's where it gets even more complicated. It was on this site, directly across the road from the other one, that a coffee house was first opened in 1654 by a man named Circus Jobson, a Jewish immigrant from Syria. Now what I want to know, were they rivals, with the ambitious newcomer Jobson vying to poach Jacob's customers out from under him with an even cooler new coffee house? Was their relationship as bitter as the coffee they served? Side note, my partner wrote that line, and he's rightly proud of it. Or were they friends? Did Circus Jobson simply see that the demand was so great for a seat at Jacob's Coffee House that another location in the neighborhood would do similarly well, and both businesses could thrive? Am I overthinking things? Will any TV channels respond to my pitch about adapting this into a historical dramedy? I may be working on an outline. Please let me pitch this. Please. Now today, the cafe here also claims to be the longest established coffee house in Europe, but has it been in continuous operation since 1654? It's unlikely. While contemporary sources do seem to confirm that there was a coffee house on this site in 1654, it wasn't this building. The frontage that currently stands here at the corner of High Street and Queen's Lane was built sometime in the 18th century, and the interior was rebuilt in the late 1960s, with the present coffee house occupying the space since 1970. The records of its occupants get a bit spotty for a while in the interim, but what we do know is that it operated as a coffee house under the name of Harper's as of a 1772 survey, and at various stages of the 19th century, the spaces at the numbers 39 to 41 High Street were variously occupied by a print shop, a post office, an antique dealer, a dressmaker, an herbalist, and yes, a cafe. So, I found a number of secondary and tertiary sources claiming or implying that any of the site has been in continuous operation as a coffee house since its inception, but I couldn't find any primary sources to verify that claim. And believe me, I have been plumbing the depth of research hell on this one. So, what is the country's oldest continuously running coffee shop? Is there even any way of figuring it out? Why am I asking this question? My diggings through local history so far have turned up a lot of other interesting things. For instance, supposedly, this location of a well-known cafe chain elsewhere in central Oxford used to be a brothel. But apparently nobody but me is super invested in unraveling this ultimately pointless mystery. What I do know is a coffee house did open on this site in the year 1650, and that it's a coffee shop again now, and it's really cute! It's a cozy little space that still managed to feel a little fancy, with plenty of nods to the building's history, and it does a good afternoon snack. And yes, my afternoon snack was pie. And yes, I am living my best life, thank you. I also know that a coffee house stood just across the road here in 1654, and the Turkish coffee is about as close as you can get these days to the coffee they'd likely have been enjoying back then. I also can't believe this is baby's first Turkish coffee. Where have you been all my life? It's so nice! And it came with a little square of Turkish delight. I love it here. I love it so much. Hey ho, editing Sammy here. Just a quick note to say that I actually like the Turkish coffee and the vibe so much at Queen's Lane that I brought my partner there for a date a couple weeks later, and we had a really, really nice time. Side note also, if you'd ever like to see me do a tour of some of my favorite coffee spots in the city, let me know, because I'd love to do it. At the end of the day, they both make for good stories. And the fact that these pieces of everyday immigrant and Jewish history are being kept alive in some way is really very special. For now, I'm just happy to enjoy my, third coffee of the afternoon. It's also worth noting that both of these fellows were running successful businesses in England a few years before the end of the Jewish exclusion period, and good for them. You can find lots more information on this and the other history I'm exploring here via the sources in the description. If you want to visit either of these two oldest coffee houses in Europe, they are easily accessible on Oxford's High Street, and Oxford itself is easily accessible via rail or coach from London and other parts of the country. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it. This is the most research I've put into any of my videos so far, and my goodness was it a lot of fun, but boy was it also a lot of work. I'm thinking of doing a little edition of prints of Mrs. Jacob and Jobson, if that's the kind of thing that would interest literally anyone other than me. And if it's not, I totally understand, but regardless, I want to thank you very much for watching the entirety of this thing. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back with another, probably slightly less research-intensive video very, very soon. In the meantime, feel free to give this a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more stuff from me, leave a comment, and let me know what you think! Should I do more of this kind of thing, or do you want to see me do something different? Let me know! I'll be back soon with some more silly nonsense, and in the meantime, you can find links to my socials in the description. I have a Patreon where I post silly artwork, and I stream on Twitch 3 times a week. In any case, I would like to thank you again very much for watching, and I hope you have a splendid day. Friends, I have had 2 very strong coffees in under an hour, and I am now vibrating at the speed of sound.